Well, thank you. This is the evaluation meeting of the first annual Fannie New Hamer branch Human Rights Conference, which occurred on Saturday, December 11th, from 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 to 2 Pacific Time. And we're coming together to give our evaluations of what worked, what didn't, and what do we think we should be focused on for the second annual Fannie New Hamer Branch Human Rights Conference. Glad to see that Rebecca has joined us. So we're only missing the UN decade. So if we could start with uh, uh, ending mass incarceration and the death penalty. Walisha Wilson, this is your personal evaluation of what worked and what didn't. And you have 3 minutes. And George Friday will give you that 1 minute finger when you talk 2 minutes. So you're on,
Okay.
Walisha.
I think it went well. And I like the fact that we were actually blessed to be able to stay in the main room. I think the only suggestion that I think would work is to have someone probably monitoring the chat. There were a lot of great questions, or maybe moderating the chat, or a lot of folks were dropping really good information into the chat. But there were some questions, not just aside from the references and links people were putting in. There were a few questions that I think a lot of folks may have didn't get answered because a lot of us wasn't really focusing on the chat. But other than that, I think it was great. I invited 2 people, and she said she thought it was awesome. Some of the information she had never known about. She did not know anything about a lot of the immigration issues, and the other topics about the nuclear weapons and stuff. So she found it to be very informative, and I know I did as well. And so I'm going to start really engaging myself in that, because I tend to be centralized, focused on a lot of mass incarceration. But after the conference, I learned myself how interconnected all of it really was, and so it was really interesting. Other than that, I didn't have any suggestions. I thought it went really good for it to be my first conference. A lot of times you see people have first conferences and not put together. I thought it was very well put together. You had great speakers and you had a good time. So I thought it was good. That's the only suggestion I had about as far as somebody monitoring the chat. But I know you said next year it's going to be in person, so hopefully we won't have to worry about that too.
Well, that sounds great. So I just heard from Tatiana. Unfortunately, hold on. Tatiana will not be able to join us. She's at urgent care with a terrible migraine. So I told her to feel better and just send us the document that she screen shared um, on Saturday with the action plans. So now let's go to Samantha and Adrian, who are doing immigration justice.
All right, here we are. Hi, everybody. Perfect timing. Samantha, you want to go?
I'm not able to share my screen. George, can you make me co-host so I can share the suggestions?
All right. So yeah, personally, I thought they went very well. I thought everything was good. I think we started what seemed to me on time. I saw Akinelli said that we had technical difficulties at first, but I didn't notice them. I thought we started well, and it was very informative. All the speakers that spoke and introduced the themes, and I wish we had a little bit more time for questions and answers, but Then we went into the breakout room, and that was good. And then the time was good. I felt that we had a lot of time, and kudos to Samantha. It was really good having two people because we're checking the chat and keeping it going. The second breakout, I was the only male there, and there were some questions about females, and there was one person that kept talking and about how the focus should be on women because this is WIFA. And I didn't want to say anything, but thankfully one of the other people in our group said, look, we're here to talk about immigration reform, and women are included in that. So that was good, but I didn't feel it was my place to butt in. But it all worked out real good. I thought the music selection was great. I was so pleased to see, hear Gil Scott Heron, which a lot of people were just blown away by. They're like, who is that? Who is that? So it's good. I think for the future, I understand we're going to do it in person. I like being on Zoom. I love Zoom. And I think we should also probably have a component of Zoom, even if we are in person, because we had a lot of people coming in. And I think that making a commitment to go to Columbus is going to be a big deal for some people, maybe a hardship even. But of course, conferences are nice in person, but we got a lot done. Samantha, your personal impressions?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Great. I thought it went really well. I wish we had had more people in our breakout room because the conversation was really wonderfully inspiring, and the more people that are inspired, the better. So I definitely look forward to having opportunities to do this kind of thing, like we talked about in number 3 here, working through podcasts and webinars and far-reaching social media to organize with people. I think with the COVID, it's a really great way to connect our power and get people on the ground together also. There were a couple of people that tried to monopolize, and there were a couple of people who just didn't have much to say, but they really enjoyed listening.
Excuse me, Samantha.
Yes.
This was, I don't know what's happened to George, but this was supposed to be in a kind of 3-minute per person
Okay. All right.
evaluation. So of the whole conference, like what worked, what didn't, in terms of the conference overall. And we have your action items, which is great, because I did ask George if she would be kind enough to collect all the action plans from the 4 different groups. Tatiana has hers, the TPNW has theirs, and now we have immigration justice, and we really do need Walisha to get with Joya to put some of those action plans in place. But it was just a kind of quick what worked, what didn't. And now that we know we're going to be on the ground in December, and given the information I've been sending out, do you have any suggestions for December? I heard a lot of what Adrian shared. So when I get to my evaluation point after George does hers, then we will see where we go from here. I'm not sure if any of the Ellens are here. Yeah, Ellen Schwartz is here. So after we hear from Rebecca in terms of what worked, what didn't, and what she suggests for as we go forward over the next year, then we will hear from George with her evaluation, and then from me. So we should be able to complete the meeting, I think, in less than an hour. So Rebecca, what worked, what didn't? Where do we go from here?
Hey everyone, thank you. And thank you again, Teresa and George, for coordinating and getting us all together. I think I will echo what everyone else said. I think it went excellently, especially for a first time conference and being online and virtual and bringing together very different causes. I love the fact that we're talking about the intersectionality. So I think that that is really crucial and key. I believe what Alicia mentioned, but I would also like to see something that explains those interconnectivities a little bit more, maybe up next year. So I think people kind of got it, but there were, at least in the group that I was facilitating, the TPNW, there was a lot of confusion around the interconnectedness and why we were even there. So I think that would be really helpful. And then the other suggestion, I do think this should be hybrid moving forward so that we're not limiting attendance to people who are able to travel and thinking socioeconomically, people who might not be able to attend if it's in person. So I like the idea of a hybrid event. And with that hybrid event, I do think that there needs to be a much larger tech team. There are many things to contend and to think about on the back end. And I'm gonna second or third the recommendation for a chat moderator. And that would be in the main session as well as in the breakout room. So having a facilitator and chat moderator for every breakout as well as for the main room. And I also really loved the music choices and the videos. I think it was great. So I loved the layout and yeah, just really small tweaks that I would recommend for next year. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. And now, George, if we can hear from you, and then Ellen on what worked, what didn't, and then I'll give my take on it. So, George, you're on.
Overall, I think it worked. I think overall the conference was excellent from start to finish. And that includes the speakers, the different levels of complexity and energy. The different breakout groups it was good that people could choose their breakout. We did have some issues with people not knowing how to get to their breakouts, but we can deal with that in future if we have something on Zoom. And this won't be an issue, I don't think, next year in person, but there wasn't really a balance to the rooms. TPNW and Immigration Justice both had about 11 people, and the UN Decade had 22, and Ending Mass Incarceration had about 28. So I think we could have done a little bit better if we had encouraged people to shift possibly. And next year, maybe we have people sign up ahead of time. I know we have the central connecting issues of how everything connects to TPNW. That will be excellent because it will help connect the dots more explicitly, but also having some balance when we have breakout groups or small groups would be a good idea too. That's it for me.
All right, Ellen, it's on you. 3 minutes, please.
Well, I agree that we need a bigger tech team. We need a bigger tech team even for a fully virtual meeting. It was really pretty exciting, taking care of all the different things that I hadn't really anticipated. And Ellen Thomas did an enormous amount of work spotlighting the current speaker and making sure that and I did some of this, making sure that the person who was about to speak got unmuted. so that everybody else would stay muted, so there wouldn't be background noise, stuff like that. Hmm. Well, maybe I'm too old to participate in the next one. Get myself out of the job. Oh yeah. I think that if you think about an in-person meeting with actual breakout rooms, how much time it takes to get people out of the plenary room and into their breakout rooms, that allotting, say, 10 minutes to get people into the virtual Zoom rooms is not excessive. My thing is, there's always going to be people who have trouble figuring out how to do it, but it still wasn't, very time consuming. It would take more time and be a lot more work to pre-assign them. But if you're going to think about pre-assigning them, then I would really recommend that more information be given about the content, about what these breakout rooms were supposed to do, what these topics were supposed to be about, because there was nothing but the titles of them, and that's all they had. Those are my thoughts.
Well, thank you, Alan. Could everybody mute themselves? Yeah, I conceived of this conference as a way to advance collaboration inside of WILF itself. So the primary focus was to engage WILF members, and particularly the branches. The other strategic objective was to get people to join WILF. So in that way, I think that I was disappointed that we didn't get to the 300 registrations because I knew that we would be running about a third of who actually registered. But much to my surprise, in seeing the list, it looks like about 100 people were in and out of the conference at some point. And I spoke to one of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch steering committee members, and she said that she was in for the opening panel, but she had to leave for the rest of the day. And so I expected that kind of in and out. And on the issue of choice, it is important to me that people were able to choose what they thought was most important and that they wanted to work on. So I'm less concerned about the unevenness. I am ecstatic over the fact that so many people got in the UN decade, because I thought there would be relatively low attendance in that breakout. And we of course knew in advance that ending mass incarceration and the death penalty was going to have high interest. And I thought that the job and I stayed there most of the time, and I thought that Joya was extremely well prepared on the death penalty issue, which we want to be able to lift that up strongly as we work with the Advancing Human Rights Committee of WILF on that subcommittee. So we actually had 3 subcommittees of the Advancing Human Rights Committee of WILF US. So that was no accident. And so the TPNW is something that we all need to learn a lot about. So going forward, in terms of what the next steps are, we'll talk about after we do a kind of tech questions, because I was quite disappointed when it was time to move to the breakout rooms, that there seemed to be so much confusion about people getting out of the main room. And so that was a bit awkward. So we started a minute or two late in the main room because there were still people in the main room who were trying to get to other rooms. So that was a bit frustrating. But I think the biggest thing that I was most concerned about is the videos. Where are the videos? And I'm really disappointed that Kareem is not here because he said he would be here. And so I will leave it to you, Ellen, to find out if you have all the videos and what videos are missing, because the most important thing we have to do, other than setting up the listserv, is getting the videos up on the YouTube website for Wilt and on the SARN website. So where do matters stand with the videos, Ellen?
I have the videos that I recorded, and I have received nothing from any one of the videos from the breakout rooms.
Well, Walisha is on the stack, so go ahead, Walisha.
No, I was just saying, I think, of course, mine was in the main, so didn't have any responsibility with recording, but I kind of wanted to agree with, I know, but then Teresa said that the reason why she did it like that, and I thought that's really good for people to have a choice, but I was saying too, should it be a consideration next year with it being in person and a hybrid, where some folks, you still could get high attendance where people could not go. Sometimes folks will have hybrid attendances and they'll have conferences, but then they'll have breakout sessions, but they'll either be Zooming live or recording it, but all of the recording is from the main session. There's never any footage of what's going on in the breakout session. So if a possibility of that would be, could be able to have the entire event in one room, but just have it where there are breaks in between. That way, whoever is streaming, every topic, every panelist is able to be heard. So you would have maybe a 30-minute panel, 10, 15 minutes Q&A, then a 10-minute break, and then a new panel would come up. That way, all of the entire conference is able to be streamed with just one time, not with different, having to set up different cameras or go to different rooms, or somebody saying, where it being only the main room has been recorded, because it's kind of difficult when you are doing any type of hybrid where you do in-person streaming. So I just thought that might be a consideration as well. A lot of folks say when you go to conferences, you should be breaking out in different rooms, but it's not necessary, especially when people are trying to join virtually. You could very well be able to do it and streamline it by having the entire conference in one room, but just bringing different panels on, having that 10-minute break, and then let everybody know where we're calling the next panel.
Well, thank you, Walisha. But it was not a webinar. And so I think all of these suggestions about how we can tweak the virtual thing, what I have learned since 1998 is that you don't organize much of anything in virtual reality. You just don't. You have to have people who are on the ground in communities who are willing to take up the action plans. And if I can help people see the vision clearly, that we ask people to come up with those 3 proposals at the end, because those 3 proposals in all of the areas are the kind of basis for developing a more strategic plan over time, because we will not be able to end mass incarceration if we don't have a long view, because it took a long time to get to where we are. That crime bill was a real point in time that helped to really push us into where we are today. So we do know what needs to be dismantled. And what I was pushing you on, Walisha, is what is the work that needs to be done around reentry, because recidivism is a big problem. So it's not about the conference per se. It's about what are we going to do afterwards. It's always about that. So I have been to many, 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 many conferences. We walk away from the conference and nothing's done. We come back to the next conference. Well, this is going to be different because over this next year, we will hold people accountable. So everybody who says they're really working on ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, well, let us see what you got. So that's what the conference was all about. And I must say, Adrian, I felt that you didn't do enough to get GLAR involved in some of the organizations most affected by the issue of immigration justice. In the Atlanta area, there's Baji and there's GLAR. And I don't know what your relationships are with them, but now is the time, as we talked last night, about building those relationships. Because the conference on the ground in Columbus is really about building the Fannie Lou Hamer branch and other branches throughout Georgia, because geography does matter. So people, I think, who can afford it in the national will fly in from Sacramento and other areas of the country because they can afford to do that. There'll be people flying in from other places because WILF is a very wealthy organization. This year, WILF members who passed away donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to WILF. One member who passed away had $347,000 donated to WILF. WILF is not broke itself. And so that's why this is an important time to talk about how WILF itself engages in the social movements in addition to building around the TPNW, which will be the centerpiece of the upcoming conference, which I won't say too much about today because these are all ideas that the Fannie Lou Hamer branch is discussing about how we're going to get all of the Congress people from Georgia who are willing to come, and I count that as only 4 of the 14 districts. How much will they be willing to commit to separating from nuclear weapons, to being a part of the movement to prohibit them? So what I've asked, just to be completely transparent, I've asked Rebecca if she would be willing to serve as conference coordinator because the Plowshares Fund opportunity is a really big opportunity. I don't know how much we can actually get from them, but I'm pretty clear we probably need to ask them for about $50,000 because people do need to get paid. And because it's money that the Southern Anti-Racism Network will be taking in and being responsible for in support of WILF and the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in particular. For that reason, members of WILF will be paid for work that they do on the conference. And so, Ellen, I don't think there's any such thing as being too old. If we, it's a decision that you have to make, but I've been quite impressed with how much you know about the tech stuff and how much Ellen knows about it and how much Rebecca knows about it. And I know that we will find a great tech team for the conference on the ground, which is going to be quite expensive, but it's going to help to build the base of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch here in Columbus, Georgia, and it's going to help to build WILF beyond Columbus, Georgia. So that's why we want to do an in-person meeting. And the breakout rooms that are going to be on the same floor with the main room where the TPNW discussion will take place. On the opening panel, everybody gets to understand the threat of nuclear weapons in the main room in the beginning. That will be the focus. And the action plans that have come out of this first conference will go into breakout rooms. And I think that people can arrange to take what goes on in those breakout rooms. And one camera may go and just kind of do a little kind of going around into the breakout rooms and capture things. But the main discussion is going to be about the TPNW. So when we apply for the Plowshares Fund, we will make it clear that we had this wonderful conference and this is what came out of it. We're going to have the second annual conference with a focus on TPNW. So that's the concept that will be put out to Plowshares in February. So I'll stop talking and see what people have to say about the idea, since we know that I thought we would be taking a little bit more time on the tech stuff, but it's just a matter of people figuring out how to get the videos to Ellen so that they can get posted on the WILF YouTube channel, because we want to make sure that all the WILF members have access to what happened at the conference, because things did go pretty well on the substance. And on the opening panel, I was so pleased at how everybody stuck to their time limits, except Cheryl. She did go over, I think, but Reverend Vaughn was excellent. And we should know that in January of 2023, there's going to be a major ending mass incarceration conference at Ebenezer. So Alicia, would you say a little bit more about that? Because as we come off the Human Rights Conference in December, we'll be going right into something big on ending mass incarceration at Ebenezer. Could you speak to that, Walisha?
Yes, I'm actually one of the co-chairs of the conference, and right now we're just basically trying to round up the final speakers. I actually had a phone call last week with Brian Stevenson and a few other folks that I suggested. And so we're just kind of like right now just trying to narrow down the speakers, but the last one they had was in 2019. And we're hoping to surpass the goal of the attendance of that by at least 20 to 30%, even despite it being COVID. So it's just a matter of getting those things in place. We're going to do it in the summer of 2022, but of course, we don't want anybody to use senators' words against him come election. So that's why we moved it to January 2023. And then once we get off that with the conference, we'll have Justice Day at the Capitol in February. And of course, right now they're talking about that being hybrid as well, some in person and also it being live streamed as well. So, but I'll make sure I keep you all updated on any details as far as the specific date and the speakers and once all that's announced.
Well, okay, George, and then I want to say more about the conference in 2019.
Rebecca and I have our hands up.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Rebecca's was up before mine.
Thank you. I just wanted to first, Ellen, are you sure you didn't get my videos? Because I sent the link and I got an email saying that the files were downloaded. So somebody has the files. I just want to make sure you're able to get them and access them. And then to the comment about in-person versus virtual and things on the ground versus online. certainly agree that being in person offers a very different way of organizing. But I will say, coming off of a very successful TPNW campaign that is mainly online, that online spacing, like the online space and organizing space, is really important and critical. And I think instead of thinking of it as like one or the other, thinking about it in conjunction with one another. So we started doing things like having online conferences, but having pods where people were meeting in person and joining the conference together in those pods. Like things like that, where you're thinking about access and thinking about the actions that people are going to take. It all has to do with the way that you organize and set things up and make them accessible for people. And then the tools which you create for follow-up and that action planning, like making an action plan be a part of the conference. So I think what we did, we created goals, but those are not action plans. So if that's what we're really focused on, I would recommend that we spend time in the conference, not just writing goals and ideas, but actually creating plans. And ideally, they would be localized plans. So different groups coming from different areas are actually pods and working together to make their local action plans. I have models of how that can be done and actualized, which I'm happy to share and talk about at a different time. So I know that that's not what we're doing here today, but
well, and Rebecca, you and I can talk about our differences on this when we talk on Friday. Because in my experience, very little gets done on the ground from people who are talking to each other in cyberspace. Because if you don't have relationships in the communities where you live, nothing happens, which is why the mass movements in this country are so weak. People showed up for the Poor People's Campaign on Monday, and I know it was a small crowd. In order to win anything, you really got to turn out millions of people, millions. And we're a long way from that in terms of taking down the US empire, especially when it comes to nuclear weapons. You're deluding yourself if you think that the US empire is going to respond to a few people at a conference. No, the idea of the conference that we had on December 11th was to find out who's ready to join the cause. And there are new people who step forward in areas like DC. When Marion joined Wilf after being disaffected from Wilf for years because of something that went down in 2019. And when she called me so angry on Sunday morning about the way one of the Wilf leaders had treated her in an email exchange, I had to talk her out of quitting and getting her money back. So these are the dynamics that are inside of the process, Rebecca. And so it's not just a matter of kind of putting things together without the relationship building process, with Wilf being the center. It's not everybody, it's not everything, it's not UFPJ, it's not Code Pink, it's Wilf. So our focus is on how do we transform Wilf into an organization that's over 100 years old, that has such a dynamic reputation, but frankly is in decline, and it's in rapid decline.
George,
That's my assessment of it. Go ahead, George.
okay, so I'll take my hand down. I have from Ellen Thomas, 34 minutes, Walisha, from the main room. I think it's your first breakout. I also have a chat that basically is just you and Joya and maybe a couple of other people. I think it's all from that main room, the first breakout session. So Ellen, I have to figure out getting that to you, but Ellen Thomas has it. So I don't think you have to get it from me again, but let me know. That's all.
Excuse me, but I think we've pretty much said enough in this evaluation meeting. Rebecca and I will talk on Friday. And the one thing I want to clarify is that, Rebecca, you do have the list of names and the emails so that you can set up the listserv at some point in the near future. Do you have that,
Yes, I do.
Rebecca?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful, because we'll talk more on Friday, because as people have noticed, I am building the conference already in Columbus. I'm talking to people at the Trade Center, the people who are doing the catering. I'm waiting on, after they sent me that big thing of all the stuff that they sell, I called them up today and I said, this is what we want. So they're going to come up with a real proposal for the food, for the meals that we will be getting food, because we're not ready to go crazy. But I know that we could ask for as much as 75,000 from the Plowshares folks. But I don't want to ask for that much for a conference. And so the Fannie Lou Hamer branch officers who are also officers of the SARN board are going to be meeting at 7 p.m. tonight. So we'll be discussing the upcoming Fannie Lou Hamer conference because the Southern Anti-Racism Network is the fiscal sponsor for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. And everybody in Columbus knows that, including the mayor and everybody on the city council and everybody. And we would have their complete support because I expect us to get 200 people in person at the conference, and a significant number of them will be from Georgia. That's just what I expect, because building the Georgia branches is going to be really important, because it's a whole lot of nuclear stuff going on in Georgia, as you probably know, Rebecca.
Yes.
So is there anything else that anybody wants to say? Because I guess the process of getting the videos to Ellen, and I will call up Kareem to find out what happened and where is the video that he did, because he did 4 hours of video. He did the opening panel and he did the ending mass incarceration. So we have that. So if we could get the other videos, Ellen, that would be great. And they should be sent to Peter Solenberger.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
I'll resend the instructions. I'm not sure if I have Peter's email address.
No, Peter is a web administrator for the Southern Anti-Racism Network. So George understands how Peter needs to get the videos. He needs to get the YouTube videos. So George, could you facilitate that process with Ellen and whoever else would be having the videos?
I sure will.
Thank you so much. Well, that's it for me. So I look forward to talking with you on Friday morning, Rebecca. So we could talk a little bit more about the idea of the in-person conference, and also to hear more about your conference in May, which I would like to get a delegation to Detroit to that. But we'll talk more about setting up the listserv and other things on Friday. Rebecca, is that okay with you?
Sounds very good. Looking forward to
Okay,
it.
great.
All right,
Well,
then.
thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.